Hello and welcome to the Blizzard Watch podcast. I'm Matt Rossi. I'm your host. With me this week, as is usually the case, are my two absolutely fantastic co-hosts, Liz Harper and Joe Perez. We just got done talking about Dishonored on the pre-show, and before that we were talking about other things. But I wanted to mention one of the things I love about Dishonored is the fact that they basically use whale oil for everything.
Yep.
And so as a result of that, a friend of mine calls it whale punk. And I just always like that. I just like the name whale punk. But anyway, we're not here to talk about whale punk. We're actually here to talk about dragon punk because we're going into the Dragonflight pre-patch in a week. Next Tuesday, as we're recording this on the 18th of October. In 7 days from the day we're recording this, the pre-patch for Dragonflight will drop. But that's not everything. And Liz pointed out in her response to the email that there's actually two separate drops for the pre-patch this time. There's the initial pre-patch, which is just rules changes and so on. It's the new talent trees and other class changes, and I think there's a little bit more than that, but nothing.
There's basically all of the big gameplay structural changes. All of the new UE stuff is going to be there. New race and class combinations are going to be there. Just kind of all the gameplay stuff, except for the content.
One other thing.
Event.
There's one other thing to mention: the rated solo shuffle, which is like the PvP way a PvPer who doesn't want to be in a group can get rating as a solo player. It's kind of like similar to it's basically an old PvP brawl that they turned into the ability to let players get actual rating in it. So it's interesting there too. But yeah, everything else, like Liz said. And on the 15th, what's coming?
On the 15th, the pre-patch event, which is Primal Storms, just an invasion event like we've seen before. There are going to be elemental bosses throughout Azeroth. I do know what I'm talking about. Zones, 4 of them, and they'll be just invasion events that fade in. And of course, unsurprisingly, there is a new currency, and there is catch-up gear you can buy with this new currency. Which, because don't we all just love these? WoW really needed one more currency.
As long as it stays to the currency tab and doesn't go into my bags, I'm fine.
We can only hope. There's also the Uldaman Legacy of Tyr dungeon, which is a revamp of Uldaman. It's a level 60 dungeon, normal only. And the Drakthir Evoker will be live and playable. You can play them through the starting zone, which is on the Dragon Isles, but you cannot play anything else until the expansion launches on the 20th.
So yeah, I'm interested especially in the Primal Storms thing. Partially because one of my favorite pre-events was the Legion one with the demon invasions. Because I got my current main to like high level really fast with that, and I'm hoping this one's like that too. Like, I would love it if I could roll like a level 1 character and start doing the Primal Storms, and suddenly, boom, level 60, let's go. That would be just great.
Find out, yeah,
that would be absolutely great.
The other thing is the gear you can buy for this. Again, kind of like the Legion event, has a unique look. So you may want to farm it out for transmog, even if you don't need the gear. The gear on the PTR was eye level 252, which I think that's pretty good. So if you want to do it, it's going to be there on November 15th.
Yay. So yeah, basically, I was saying this in work chat today that I almost feel like it's been so fast. Like, it almost like I'm used to the end of an expansion taking forever to get here and taking forever to when they announce it, it feels like it takes months and months and months and months till you actually even get a mention of the new patch. And yet this one feels like it's just been rocketing along. What do you guys think? Do you feel like you're more than ready and that you're set to get out of here? Like, where are your feelings on this? When have you talked?
It does feel fast, and I think it really feels fast because a couple weeks ago, Blizzard said, okay, we're kind of done in development, we're polishing, and you still have some classes that haven't gotten a lot of attention or feedback, like Guardian Druids did not get a single post about their class or feedback. Paladins are kind of not in a happy place because they got some small but minor updates, and I was reading a post on Wowhead earlier about Retribution Paladins that basically said the only way to fix this would be to throw away half of the talent tree and start over. So there are definitely some classes that feel like they don't have very much polish.
Wow, that feels so much like original World of Warcraft paladins.
Doesn't it though?
I remember. Did you play one in vanilla?
I did not play a paladin in vanilla. I picked it up in Burning Crusade.
There was an error on like judgments that when you would use a seal and judge it onto somebody, it would massively spike your DPS, like massively. And I was playing a paladin at the time. My first character in WoW was a paladin. And this bug wasn't intended, but as a result of it, I was destroying things. Like I seriously could go into a dungeon with some friends and just tank as Ret because things would die so fast to me. Just the seal damage was crazy. They of course fixed it because it wasn't intended and made paladins into gods. And of course I then stopped playing my paladin because why would I continue when I went from I'm literally the hammer of the gods to I'm literally going to die a lot because I no longer do so much damage. But the idea that they didn't like they were not getting paladins ready. Joe, you mentioned this a while back. Does this feel to you like the pendulum effect again?
Yep. I was actually just going to say that.
So go into it since it's your idea.
So, it's not my idea. It's not unique, but I mean, it's the theory of like game dev pendulum swing, right? So you make something, it has unintended consequences, or make something too powerful to the point where it is starting to dominate or is basically taking up a larger share. So then when you develop the next content, or in this case the next expansion, you swing hard the other way because you're trying to bring it back down, but almost invariably you kind of miss the mark because the rest of the game has been creeping up. The best example I ever give about this is Shaman during Mists of Pandaria. Resto Shaman in particular started Mist of Pandaria like nigh onto healing gods. Like you could have one in your raid of 25 people and probably could heal that raid. Absolutely unintended. Was one of those things that, should probably never have happened, but it happened. And then they adjusted it back down and it got to a normal point. But then by the end of the expansion, it was all like barely capable of healing because they had nerfed and moved things around so much that, like, as a reaction to things that were still quote unquote too powerful, that like it hit real hard. It happens, right? And so some of this stuff is probably going to happen again. And I wouldn't be surprised if we're already starting to see some of the early parts of that with how Drakthir are being evokers specifically are being like tuned throughout the beta into live. But yeah, it seems like this is at a breakneck pace, and almost invariably we're going to hit that point where one class is going to outshine the other in an unintended way, and then it's going to probably get slapped back down, or one class is going to underperform. Probably Paladins, not going to lie, after everything Liz and I have talked about over the course of the last like 6 months. And then maybe get readjusted into like being back into that, like you're saying, that judgment crazed paladin, one man army thing. So we'll see.
I will say that they've very rarely given paladins. I'm sorry, Liz. I'm just going to say this. They very rarely give paladins a buff without taking away something else almost immediately. So I don't expect that Ret paladins will become nigh unkillable gods again anytime soon. And I don't expect that holy paladins are going to get. I think they've tried to move holy paladins a bit away from their current state, but they're still pretty much a heal in melee range class, right? That's what it feels like to me.
They've added a few things to kind of encourage us out of melee range, but there are so many things that push you into melee range. Most notably the mastery, which you heal more if you are close to someone. I heal 30% more if I'm standing next to someone than if I'm like healing Joe, who is always at range.
Yeah, and it's just one of those situations where I think they would have to actually rethink. And I don't think that they did this. I don't think this is not a criticism, but I think when they went into the new talents, they weren't trying to reimagine the classes. They were trying to reimagine talents. But as a result of that, go ahead.
They certainly didn't, like when we went into Legion, they really kind of reimagined and tried to define each spec for each class. And we don't have that. They're trying to change the way the classes are set up, not necessarily to reimagine them that much.
Yeah, they want to give you the same class fantasy. They just want to do it with a different talent system. And I'm not negative about that. I've been back and forth on it. It's not that I think it's a bad idea, but I do feel like that. Like for instance, with Guardian Druids, first off, you deserve it. Sorry, I had to get that out. No, it's not fair. But you guys really made me mad in Burning Crusade, and I've never really gotten over it, even though you were called Feral Druids back then. All that AoE. Oh my god, so much AoE. Anyway, with Guardian Druids right now, I think part of the problem is that Guardian Druids have been pretty strong. And so sometimes when a class has been pretty strong, what ends up happening is that it's not even that they nerf it. It's just that the talents, when they redesign the talents, they weren't thinking about ways to make Guardian Druids better. Because they're already pretty strong. Yeah, but you've made some classes deliberately better. And that means that now you have to rethink every class. This is the game balance issue that caused talents to shift forms several times over the years. So I'm not at all surprised that there are some classes that don't feel finished yet. I honestly find myself wondering if they had enough beta time to really finish them all.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I'm worried about. Like. Right? Like
for all of the complaints about Holy Paladins and all the complaints about Paladins in general, I think there's a lot of unhappiness with the core class tree. It's a lot of it. I am hopeful. I think there are some interesting possibilities in the new talent tree, but it's hard to tell until you have your final polish pass on everything, until you're playing with your usual group of friends. That's one of the things that's always kind of off kilter in a beta is, you're playing with strangers and it's a different dynamic. It's a different feel.
Yeah, I would agree.
I absolutely agree. I don't know. I guess I kind of wish we had a little more time before release. I'm not going to lie.
It would have been nice if we had a little more polish.
Well, it's not the fact that I worry about the polish aspect of it. My problem is I think that when you rush the game when things haven't been balanced, at least close enough for a lot of classes or some specs, let's say 30% of the specs, 20% of the specs haven't been tweaked or are not performing where they probably should in comparison to other things, the pendulum effect tends to get exacerbated when they do it during live, right? Because they have limited windows. They have to be able to do it in a way that doesn't disrupt things. And it becomes either not enough or too much, depending. And it seems to be the instances where they did the live tuning like that during a game, during an expansion, like with such a major change like this, like, Cataclysm, it opened up a lot more of classes weren't viable for a long period of time. And this is just observation. I don't really have any hard data to back this up because I haven't really been sitting here compiling it, but it's just anecdotal observation from what I've seen in the past. And that's one of the things that I kind of worry about. Because at the end of the day, not everything has to be perfectly balanced, but like I'm a firm believer of you should be able to go into a raid with your group of friends with whatever combination of tanks, healers, or DPS you want, and be fine. Maybe not optimal, but fine. And I just worry that we're not going to be fine. So.
Yeah, it is something we'll have to wait and see with to a certain degree, but I do think that this is a very ambitious undertaking, and
very much so.
It's not surprising that there will be hiccups, and I don't think we're going to end up with what we had in Wrath of the Lich King, where certain classes just didn't scale properly due to things that were not necessarily class related. Like, I mean, we don't have an armor pen thing here. Like armor pen in Wrath of the Lich King just completely, it had nothing to do with what your class could do on paper. Like your talents and abilities on paper weren't necessarily the issue. Like I don't think rogues had any talent spec that you would point at and say, this is ridiculous in Wrath. But all rogues ended up doing tons of damage because armor pen.
Mm-hmm.
And that created the way you would spec would be in a way that could benefit from all that armor pen. So if you were a poisons rogue, that wasn't as good anymore because poisons don't get any benefit from armor pen and stuff like that. I don't think we're going to see that. I think this is much, much more along the lines of, are the talents doing what they should be doing? And, for some classes, I think it's not going to be ready in time or they just have straight up decided they're going to go in a good enough state. That's how it feels to me, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I am really surprised it's coming out as soon as it is. Next week, we will be looking at these talents again. I mean, I looked at them a lot already. Quite frankly, I don't know if anyone else feels almost burned out on the new talents. Like I feel like I've been looking at them if they've changed and if they've been adjusted, and I'm kind of happy that we'll get somewhat of a final version. Just at least now I know this is the version you will be dealing with at least until the next patch, if that makes sense. Because like Joe points out, you don't. There's only so much they can do when the game is live. Big changes tend to happen in between expansions. The changes we're going to get are not likely to be, as Liz said, we got to throw out half of this and start over. That's not going to happen during the expansion. I can't remember a time that's ever happened. If you can, feel free to say, but I don't remember that happening. So, anything else about this you guys want to talk about before we move on?
I do want to bring up Winds of Wisdom because that is actually not going away on Tuesday. So for people like me who are leveling alts right now, you have until November 15th to finish up your alts. When Drekthir arrive, the Winds of Wisdom is going away.
This little dwarf that I just started leveling again is very thankful. The one that I'm actually doing in this stream. So yeah, I'm going to quickly mention the accessibility and heads up stuff. The heads up, the display changes are actually really cool. There's a new UI and a lot of stuff that we currently do with mods will now just be part of the base UI. The base UI is adding in customization, and it's really cool. I like it. That's really all I've got to say on it. I don't have I'm not one of those people who does a ton of moving their UI around, but I like that it's now baked into the game and I don't have to download a mod for it.
Yeah, that's a big thing for me.
And the accessibility features, I think we did a post about them a while back. They're all still there. There's the press and hold one for spell casting. Basically kind of like instead of having to spam anything, you just push and hold, which I think is good. I think that's a good change. There's interact keys. There's gamepad support, which was really interesting when I played with it. I am not the person gamepad support is for, but I do think it's cool that they have it. Like you could play your character entirely with the gamepad. Like if you had a gamepad, you could just put it up there and you could play the game entirely. Just move your character, cast spells from it, everything. And if that is the kind of game you want to do, the support is there now. So there's actually a lot of really neat stuff coming in. I'm going to ask Liz and Joe. I'm going to go with Liz first. Of the things coming in, what's the thing you are the most excited for?
Talent trees for sure. I'm interested to see kind of what I can do with this. For example, I was playing through the Night Fae campaign last week on my Paladin, and y'all listening out there, if you know Paladins, you know Night Fae is not good. It is bad. It is bad, and it feels bad as a Paladin. And I'm like, oh, I really wish I had my Kyrian talent that makes everything work. And, next week, I will be able to do that. I could spec Night Fae and still have Divine Toll, which is currently the Kyrian talent. And being able to have these reliable abilities and still do whatever I want in the game, if I want to finish all of the Covenant quests, then I could still have this, what I consider a really key core ability to the class. So I am super looking forward to this. Maybe it won't work out as well as I hope, but I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, Joe?
I just want the expansion here so I can go and find more Tuskar. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I am 100% going to continue to claim that should I ever be made an NPC in this game, it's going to be a Tuskar. I know it. So, but they're my favorite race, and I want more of them because they're so dang adorable.
Yes, the Wolford Brimley. But yeah, at this point, let's move on to another little post here. Basically, this one, we did a Blizzard Watch podcast a couple of weeks back now. I think it was like last month at this point. But, and wow, now I do not remember the man's name. What? Oh my God.
Ben Brode?
Are we talking about?
Ben Brode.
Yeah.
It was Ben Brode. Thank you.
Yeah,
Jeez.
that guy.
Yeah, I could not get my brain to do it. I knew who he was, but my brain wouldn't do it. Anyway, he came on and we had a really nice talk about a wide variety of topics from Hearthstone and World of Warcraft to his new game that's coming out with Second Dinner, Marvel Snap, and that's out today as we're recording.
Oh my God, I've played so much of it today.
Yeah, we were recording that.
Really? I haven't downloaded it yet.
So
listen.
since Joe's played a bunch of it, Joe.
I know I have some employees and coworkers that listen to this podcast. I'm sorry. I was in meeting hell today, and like I was just there as like the token representative, and there was nothing for me to do. And then I realized that this game released, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll play a game quick here and there. No, I burned my battery out on my phone. Like I drained it completely today. It is ridiculous, I'm not a person that generally likes mobile games. But this is snappy, and it has like when Ben was talking about it having like this simplicity but depth of strategy at the same time, he wasn't joking. Like its premise is really, really simple. Have more power on a control node than your opponent does from cards you draw from your deck, and if you control 2 out of 3, you win. And you can raise the stakes of the ante at any time to try to get more cosmic cubes out of your opponent if you know you're going to win, and you can retreat if you think you're going to lose. But there's so many nuance, like placement of effects, because some of the locations drastically change what happens. Some of them dump your hand. Some of them swap your hand with your opponent's. Some of them make your cards more powerful. Some of them remove power from your cards. Some of them send rocks everywhere, and then you get stuck with a lump of coal in your hand that you have to play to make room for something else. And you can only have 4 cards at a location, so you kind of have to pick and choose. And so like this really simple premise and these really quick games feel really rewarding when you like crack the mind puzzle of the best combination of what you have in your deck. It's just super, super cool. The animations are fun. Upgrading the card seems fine. It has a battle pass system that doesn't make me want to claw my eyeballs out, which is battle pass is completely free and you just get rewards for playing the game. Just play the game, which is the absolute best battle pass you could ever have, in my opinion. But like it's the questing doesn't like, it's not like predatory, like play 13 games in a row to unlock this 100 XP or whatever. It's cool, you're playing the game anyway, here's cool stuff you can do. By the way, here's a quest to go like make another deck besides the default one that you've been using and try to experiment and play around with stuff. Like it's really, really neat. The animations are good. I think I've said that already, but it's really fun. The idea of like using the phone or your mobile devices, gyroscopic 3D to have layered 3D effects on the card. So when you move the device around, the image shifts and moves, and even going as far as to have them being animated in doing the same thing. It's just a ton of fun. It was more fun than I expected it to be. And I have dumped a ton of time into it today. This is dangerous. It is very, very dangerous. I blame you for this, Ben. If you're listening, this is your fault. You made a damn good game. Please, everybody at Second Dinner, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's just fun. It's been super fun. I don't know what I like. If you have any questions about it, feel free. Like, I don't know what else to say about it.
I think my biggest problem with the game is just I don't have time for this many games, particularly games that I'm going to wind up playing a lot of. It's just how do you make the hours in the day to play all the things that you want to play? I don't know. If you figure that out, any of you, let me know.
Yeah, it is one of those things that life, unfortunately, demands us pay attention to it. But you know, I'm thinking about like these 6 or 7 games I'm trying to play at once. So it is so
many.
Also, it's really entertaining to hear Ben Brode say victory when you win, because it's absolutely him.
I did want to move on to something because Liz mentioned it before, I think during the pre-show, but maybe early on this podcast. I no longer can tell what time is or anything. But Arclight Rumble, Warcraft Arclight Rumble, in case you've forgotten, that still exists.
Yeah, it does.
And they've added the Arclight surges to the beta. Do you know enough about the surges to talk about them, Liz?
I know the basic idea. Basically, one of the biggest problems, in my opinion, with Arclight Rumble was there are very few ways to make gold in the game, and gold is what you use to buy new heroes, to buy upgrades to your heroes. It's pretty important as you want to keep progressing. You need gold, and gold is earned in game. But it's like for each map, there are like a certain number of encounters on the map, and you get gold when you finish them. And then you can get gold by playing them through with a different leader than you did the first time. But you can, you only get gold the first time you play through all of those. So, and once you play through all those, the problem I ran into was it's like, okay, I played through all of this. I played through all of this and I get somewhere where I'm stuck. And there's like nothing I can do to make gold anymore except do the 3 random quests that pop up. And that's it. You're just kind of grinding because you can't go back and make gold anymore. So surges are, I mean, they feel kind of like an invasion in WoW. Suddenly you go back to an old zone and it scales up to your current level and you can earn gold from it again, which I think it's a good change. But I was talking about this on the pre-show. It's been in early access for a while, or closed beta. And I'm already kind of tired of the game because when it first came out, I was like really loving it. I was really enjoying it. And I played it a whole lot. And now they've come out with this patch that directly addresses one of the big problems I had with the game. But I'm kind of tired of it. And I haven't actually played it since the patch rolled out.
Okay. That's at least the basics of it. So if you're still interested in Warcraft Arclight Rumble, or you haven't got a chance to play it yet, because not everybody has.
Well, yeah, it's a closed beta. It's not a big beta test yet.
So, that's the latest thing there. We don't really have a lot to talk about with Overwatch 2. They put out a post recently just kind of talking about various things. The one thing that they mentioned is that they have about 25 million players. And I have to admit to being a little surprised. I kind of didn't think they'd have 25 million players, to be honest.
It's a lot. It's a whole lot.
Well, I mean, I think part of the thing is that they went free to play. So
yeah, so it's really easy to pick up.
Yeah, you can just download it and start. It's still Overwatch, but I mean, there's a lot of different changes to it. The 5-player teams and so forth. We talked about it last week that there was a bit of roughness to the launch. And Joe just talked about battle passes in general when he said that it's the best kind of battle pass and that it doesn't make him want to rip his eyes out. This has me wondering if the Overwatch battle pass is helping or hindering it. Like, if you want to progress in Overwatch right now, you have to play every day, basically.
Or you spend multiple hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, well, there's that. Yeah. So I wonder if that's one of the reasons that so many more people are playing, and that they've come back to play for a while, and they're now in that cycle that I was in with Diablo Immortal, where I felt the need to play constantly, just to try and keep up with this. So, I don't know. Go ahead.
I think the bigger question about Overwatch 2 is how many people are going to be playing in a month, in 2 months.
Yeah.
And that's probably not a number they're going to release unless it's a higher number. Just because you burn out on these things. You burn out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially...
sorry, Joe, go ahead.
Well, especially because we're starting to move into like massive new game release territory too, right? Like,
oh yeah.
Like they're not to say that they're cutting into their own market share, but we were literally just talking about being about a month away from the release of Dragonflight. But there's also tons of other games coming out over the course of the next couple months that will draw some of those players away. Right now, it's sort of in the perfect position because it's free to play. It is the new, or it's at least new on everybody's mind right now. So yeah, of course it's going to be good right now. But I think Liz is right. Like, I'm really curious how it's going to survive number wise in November and December and January when all the other games come out and things that people have been waiting for are released.
The other thing is everyone playing Overwatch 1 has gotten access to heroes immediately. And that's not going to be the case. Yeah, most. And if you did the pre-order, you have Kiriko immediately. But the next time they roll out new heroes, it's not going to be like that because you're going to have to play through most of the battle pass to get those new heroes, at least kind of as they've mapped it out. And I wonder how many people are going to have the enthusiasm for that. Like right now, it's exciting to jump in. You can get Kiriko really fast. Most players can. But is it going to be exciting when Overwatch is all like, hey, new hero, how exciting. And you log in and it's like, okay, I have to play for 3 weeks every day to get this new hero. Is that going to be exciting? Is that going to be fun?
Before Joe comes in with what I'm sure is going to be an actual insightful, useful point, my completely not insightful or useful point was that I thought you said Trico, as in from the last, Trico from Last Guardian. And I was like, they made Trico a hero? And I was like, I was imagining like throwing barrels in how's that going to work in Overwatch? How are we going to get him till he gets flashed in the the whole thing? And then I realized, no, she said Kiriko. What's wrong with you?
Yes, the Kitsune.
I do desperately want Trico. And heck, let's just bring Ico into this, like a little horned boy Ico and a Colossus from Shadow of the Colossus. One of them.
Sorry, every time somebody says Ico, I think of the song Ico.
Yeah. But now Joe will do his hopefully much better point than what I just did.
So I've just been reading a lot of initial impressions from people that are used to playing games. Like, I'll use Fortnite as the example with the Battle Pass system, right? And it's a little bit of an eye-opening experience because, like, in Fortnite, there's nothing game-breaking. It's cosmetic stuff that you play and unlock as you move along. That's fine. In Overwatch, like Liz has pointed out, it's going to be heroes at some point that are going to be on that battle pass and will be unlockable later on for an unspecified amount and for an unspecified conditional, right? We don't know what'll happen after they're off the game pass or off the battle pass, how long they'll be until you can actually purchase them or get them. There's a lot of variables we don't know yet because they haven't, even though the game's out, they haven't really told us that yet. But the interesting thing about it is the time commitment, because that's where battle passes start to, that's their purpose, right? Their purpose is to drive engagement. Their purpose is to make you want to log in every day or multiple times a day and, play to try to maximize your content. And I think the article I was reading, Fortnite is, if you do an hour a day, every day for 3 months, you're going to max out the battle pass, because that's what their seasons last 3 months, and that's what their battle pass is. They immediately felt like an hour a day, even in Overwatch 2, wasn't enough. And then even then, it would be cutting into time of any other game that they enjoyed playing that possibly had a battle pass. So it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out, because everybody's doing a battle pass now too. It's not just Overwatch 2, right? We talked about Diablo Immortal doing one. Rocket League has one. League of Legends has one. Smite has one. Basically any video game that involves multiple people and sort of a multiplayer aspect has one. Heck, even Marvel Snap has one. So it's going to be interesting.
And Diablo 4 is going to have one.
Yeah, Diablo 4 will have one.
They have stressed the pay for battle pass is cosmetic only.
Yeah. I think at this point, though, that is a good segue into something that's not really tremendously newsy, but it's worth at least a mention. Apparently, people have been able to download the Diablo 4 closed beta and are playing it. So people who are not working at Blizzard are now getting access to the closed beta for Diablo 4. So we're one tiny little step closer to, an open beta, which would be nice. Please, God, please. I want to play Diablo 4 so bad. But I think at this point we should probably move on to doing some questions. Go ahead.
Did we want to talk about Dragonflight's new Mythic Plus affix, which we've gotten a little more info on since they've been on the PTR and they did a bit of a redesign last.
Yeah, that was the thing that I think is worth talking about, the redesign on it. I'm sorry, I blanked. I also don't think Hallow's End really needs to be mentioned, other than Hallow's End is around. Good, there we go. Hallow's End. The classic Realms thing we should mention, though, before we do Thundering. See, we're never going to get email stuff,
Yeah, stuff is happening. It's real exciting.
But if you are on a Seasons of Mastery realm right now in WoW Classic, you are now given the option to transfer your character off. I think you can go to either a Wrath or a BC realm. I don't think
there aren't BC realms, are there? They're just
That's
Wrath
right.
realms.
Yeah, there's Wrath realms. I think you can just go to a Wrath realm. I don't know if you can. If you're doing a Season of Mastery, it's 1 to 60. Maybe you can go to a Classic era realm. I don't remember if that's been mentioned or not. But regardless, if you don't transfer off, they're going to delete the server. So your character will be deleted if you don't transfer it off. If you've been doing Seasons of Mastery this whole time, if you've been doing the raids, if you've gotten your level 60 through all that content, either you transfer it or it is gone. So do that, I guess, unless you don't care. Which, maybe you don't. I don't know. I can't tell you how to live. But let's talk about that Thundering affix, because I have no idea what it does anymore because they keep changing it. But go ahead. Let's talk about this thing.
Every so often in Mythic Plus, a storm will pass over you and give you either Mark of the Wind or Mark of the Lightning, which the description is overloads a player with primal power, increasing their damage and healing by 15% for 15 seconds. So both buffs do exactly the same thing. So that sounds pretty rad, right? Plus 15%. Okay, great. Except if you let the buff expire, the player is stunned for 8 seconds and takes some damage. So how
You
you
have to
get rid of
basically
these-
cleanse it, yeah.
how you get rid of it, though, is a Mark of the Wind and a Mark of the Lightning person have to run into each other, and that clears the buff.
I see nothing could ever go wrong with this ever whatsoever.
I find this hilarious because it's like the opposite of that thing from the first raid in Shadowlands, where you had to run next to somebody but not go too far away from them. This one, you have to turn and just veer right into somebody. Like,
But this is exactly like the blasphemy mechanic on Anduin, where you're tagged either in purple or in yellow, and you have to run into someone of the opposite color. And if you don't, you're dead, and they're dead also. So
we don't know anything about that, do we, Liz?
Yeah, I've definitely never died or killed anyone with that.
No! Sorry, what?
I definitely never died or killed anyone on Sludge Fist either, where you have to stay close to someone. Never. Nope. Do you think Stop listens to this podcast? Because I got chained to him a lot.
I still remember, sorry, this is an aside, but I still remember the time that you and I got paired, and I didn't realize that you and I were paired, and I did the whole Night Fae blink and killed you, and I felt so bad. Because I just stopped dead in my tracks, and I was like, I didn't even hit the button. I just looked over at Tart, and I was just like, I think I killed Liz.
Yeah, I mean, I would never kill my raid mates in that way. Definitely, totally not. I am a super qualified player, and I have never done that ever again.
All I'm saying is this mechanic is going to lead to much trolling. I know our groups.
Yeah, but it's just, it's going to be really difficult to balance because, okay, if you're all in melee, is this going to be a problem where you're just going to clear it automatically and you don't get the buff? But it's also, like, it seems like kind of an interesting balance. It's like, are you going to try and get that extra 15% for as long as you can? Or are you going to clear it immediately and not worry about that stun? So that could be interesting. And also, there's the thing that since parties are 5 players and you have to have a pair, there's always going to be an odd man out who doesn't get a buff.
Or, I mean, is it they don't get a buff or that they can't cleanse it?
I believe it's just someone is not going to get that 15% buff. Someone doesn't have to worry about cleansing it.
Which would be like the tank, right? It would make more sense.
Yeah, it would make sense if that's just the tank, and the tank just does not have to deal with this mechanic. But
so congratulations, tank, you get to miss out on stuff.
This is how you can tell that I'm not doing the game design, because I would totally just give it to all 5 people and watch them.
So Joe, you do a lot more Mythic Plus than I do. What do you think?
I don't mind this. It doesn't feel that bad. Plus, there's a lot of mitigation as far as like personal stuff goes. So depending on what the actual damage is, I'm fairly confident it's not going to be as brutal as we think it will be right now, or as we're making it out to be. I'm fine with it. I think it's going to be interesting. I also think it'll be interesting to see how random groups handle it in particular.
Yeah, I think it's likely that random groups that are trying to do mythics are gonna. Well, that's the thing is there's not that many. Yeah, there's not many Mythic Pluses with random groups.
No, you are incorrect. You are incorrect in that. There's usually as soon as Mythic Plus becomes available, there is usually a healthy amount of pug groups now.
Those pug groups are going to have a trouble because they're going to have to sit down and actually coordinate what they're doing, or they're just going to cleanse it so they don't have to deal with it.
Well, I think if you cleanse it, you still get the 8-second stun though.
Do you?
No. Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
So it doesn't seem what it says. It says it overloads a player, increasing their damage and health by 15% for 15 seconds. If the buff expires, the player is stunned. Not if it's cleansed off.
I would be very surprised, and maybe anybody who's listening to the podcast, if you did some Mythic Plus testing, please let me know. But I would be surprised if you could just purge it off.
Then why would you like, one of the things there is one of the strategies is to take advantage of the 15% buff for the 15 seconds and then get rid of it just as it's about to expire. You wouldn't care if taking it off of you via this mechanic makes you get the stun and damage increase anyway. Then why do it?
Because
There's no benefit anymore.
Well, because I'm saying is you could try I could see them being in a world where the design is you have to balance maximizing it while coordinating clearing it with the opposite person. It's the same, like in very much the way the Anduin one is, because you can't purge that, right? And if it expires on you, you just die. So like I could see them taking that mechanic, putting it in here, and it's basically I think Padilla is saying yes, it's a punishment. You only cleanse it by matching. I could see that being a thing for Mythic Plus because they intentionally want it to be difficult.
I think you two are talking about two different things. I think what Joe is saying is that you cannot purge or cleanse it in the traditional way. You can't just, a healer can't just
right. You have to do the mechanic to get rid of it.
That's what I'm saying. You have to do the mechanic, but if you play the mechanic properly, you can get rid of it without. It doesn't. I don't think that you can even cast a cleanse on them and nothing will happen. I don't think it even comes off.
I would be very interested in that because things like ice block are there, right? So like, and that drops most debuffs. I'm really curious. I really wish I would have gotten to do some Mythic Plus testing, honestly.
Here's a good one that I have in no way done ever before. Divine Shield removes a lot of stuff. It removes chains on Sludge Fist. It removes your debuff on Anduin. And if you do that, your partner may possibly immediately die.
Paladins, the trolls of the Warcraft world since vanilla, unintentionally.
I'm sometimes you're troll intentionally, but usually I just, it's like you were like with the soul shape, and I press the button. I'm in trouble. I'm gonna press the button that keeps me from being in trouble, and then oops, I maybe just murdered someone.
But with that, I think we can now try to move on to doing some emails. Not very many of them, but whatever. If you've got a question for the podcast, you can send it via our email account, which is podcast@blizzardwatch.com, with podcast or Blizzard Watch in the subject line, so we know it's for this show. If you don't want to do that and you want to use our Discord, we've got two channels, one for patrons, one for just everybody. The patron channel is Patron Q and Podcast Questions. And that's for anybody who's a patron, because you guys, lights on and enjoy that whole thing where we can see what we're doing. Or you can go to the Q and Podcast Questions channel, and I did this week. And you can ask your question there. What I'm going to do here is this time I'm going to just read one because it's one that I find amusing. This one is from Jasmine DeClark, who gave their email address in case Joe wants to look at that, and you'll know who it is. So I figured I could ask another question, and here it is. WoW has old gods. It has the Pantheon of Death. It's got like Lords of Order, the Titans who are like Lords of Order if you squint. But who are the Lords of Chaos? Do demons count? Or could there be Titans / Lords / Gods of Chaos that weren't part of the Burning Legion under Sargeras because they were effectively too powerful for him to conquer the way he did the demons? It always confused me that there weren't any inherently chaotic beings on the same scale as the Titans, and now we know about old gods and eternal ones and the first ones. It feels like even more of an omission. Anyway, skulls to the Skull Throne and blood and souls for my bro Joe.
Thanks, Corn. I appreciate you. Yeah, I mean, I was gonna. This would have been perfect for lore watch, and I may have to steal it again. I think demons do count. I think they really are just sort of chaotic. They're sort of chaotic neutral, right? Like they just kind of like do things. So those heads of the demonic orders, even though they're still quote unquote order, it's sort of unpredictable. So I don't know. I think it would honestly be demons. I think that's about the best bet I can get. Matt, what do you think?
I don't know. I honestly have been thinking about this one since I read the email, and I mean, I get what they're saying in that, like, like the old gods and the Titans and the eternal ones, and they all seem to be like on a relatively similar plane of power. Like, I mean, the old gods are clearly not as powerful as the Titans, since like one Titan could just reach down and pluck an old god.
Yeah, old gods are sort of like the acne of Titans, right?
Yeah, but I mean, demons individually aren't as powerful as Titans, but I mean, obviously the Fel really messes the Titans up. So I don't know. I think maybe it's not. I think that the scale thing, I understand why you're thinking that way, but I don't know if it's necessarily the case that every being that has that kind of connection is the same scale. Like the Naru are smaller than the old gods.
Or maybe it is the Void Lords.
Yeah, it could be.
Because the Void Lords see, like, the Void sees all possibilities as reality, essentially, right? So that, what other form of chaos is that? Then everything is right. Nothing is wrong. Everything is correct. That is chaos.
Well, I mean, it's chaos or it's like void, because you're literally saying that everything is equal, and if everything is the same, then nothing is anything. Which I think that's where they're going with it. I don't know.
Sure.
It is one of those things that, yeah, it is not particularly something I feel like we can answer yet.
Listen, all I know is that if Khorne, Slaanesh, Tzeentch, or Nurgle showed up in Warcraft, I mean, I'd run. Let's be honest. We don't need Chaos Gods there. Chaos Gods can stay in 40k.
It's bad enough. But all right, I'm gonna throw this one to Liz. You can pick which of these 2 remaining questions we have.
Okay. Wow. Okay. I'm gonna go with this one from Tetsimi. Question for the Blizzard Watch podcast. Which Dragonflight does your main/primary character associate with? And which one do you, as the player, associate yourself? This is I think I've got to go with the red dragon.
Okay. Why?
That's a really okay. You're asking me, the player who has no idea what the heck WoW lore is, other than it's a thing somewhere out there that exists.
The answer of I just really like red dragons is very acceptable here, Liz.
I mean, red dragons. I always think of Alexstrasza coming flying over the Wrathgate and just burning it all down. Just getting rid of all of the plague with cleansing fire. And I'm into that. I'm into that. It's like, okay, it's bad. I'm going to burn it down. It's good. Well, maybe I'll cauterize it with fire to help it something. And there's the fact that I don't really have a good vibe with the other Dragonflights. Like Blue Dragonflight, totally great, but they're all like arcane magic, which is not kind of my character's vibe, I suppose. And Green Dragonflight, nothing wrong with them, except they're all kind of naturey Emerald Dream, and that's kind of not my... Bronze Dragonflight, those are interesting, but I'm feeling the Alexstrasza angle here.
Okay. Matt, do you have an opinion?
Someone else.
Okay, Black Dragonflight.
Yeah.
Tell me it's not appropriate.
You saw that coming.
I mean, both in terms of the current one, where it's sort of not quite as malevolent, where it's like, we're trying to help, but we are the Black Dragonflight, so it's going to be creepy. Or the original flavor under good old Neltharion, a.k.a. Deathwing. I'm actually, to this day, I'm really sad that Deathwing didn't get to be more of an evil genius. Like, there were some plans that definitely had the capacity for evil geniushood, but it always kept feeling like they never let him just come forth and twirl his mustache and be evil and be articulate about it. It was always big dragon smash things. And that's the least interesting thing about Deathwing, was big dragons smash things. The most interesting thing about Deathwing was the fact that, despite the fact that he was one of the aspects, despite the fact that he was so powerful, for a long time he was the only aspect who had full access to his power. Mm-hmm. Yet he still thought it was worth his time to pretend to be a human and arrange a marriage to Calia Menethil. Not because he was interested in Calia Menethil, but because he would then become a potential claimant to the throne of Lordaeron once he killed off Arthas, which he was going to do. You know what I mean? He didn't just think in big terms. He also thought in really small terms for a dragon. And I liked that about him. I liked that he was the kind of evil that was going to get his own huge, massive talons dirty. It wasn't going to leave this up to minions. He was going to get in there and personally suborn the Menethil dynasty, if he hadn't been stopped by that pesky mage and his pesky elf friend and that pesky dwarf. If those guys hadn't gotten in the way, that plan totally would have worked. And I like that about Deathwing. I like that he's that kind of character. And I've always thought the Black Dragonflight are interesting. And I think to a certain degree, it's cool that we're going to get to see them trying to be the original Black Dragonflight again. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think it's really kind of cool that we're going to have black dragons doing black dragon stuff, but for the side of good, as far as we can call it that. So yeah, Black Dragonflight.
As far as me, the person, Black Dragonflight all the way, for many of the same reasons that Matt pointed out. It's the warder of the deep places, the protectors of the earth, the the ones that are guardians and stewards over the land. Like that definitely resonates with like my personality. They're also very science minded. They're probably the most pragmatic of the Dragonflights when they're not tainted. So like that tends to be more of how I tend to be in real life approaching troubleshooting and solving issues. I tend to try to be more pragmatic about it. But there's also like, this is going to sound weird and it's not, I don't know any way to say it. There's like a deep, profound sadness and loneliness to what the Black Dragonflight was asked to do, which I think kind of set them apart from the rest of the Dragonflight to a certain extent. And I think we're going to see tinges of that story in Dragonflight, especially as you play the Drakthir starting area. And that sort of resonates with me for, better or worse. The character in game that I play, Loader, the shaman that has existed over many lifetimes and many different character races, all explained through a series of weird fictions that I've written about my character to justify race changing, because that's just the way my brain works, would probably be closer to Ysera and the Green Dragonflight as far as the lofty dreams and believing in the best and having the sort of, I don't want to say like the hope for a better tomorrow, but like while Alexstrasza was the life warder, Ysera was always still aligned with life and nature, but also like a little more gentle in the way of doing it than Alexstrasza was. So I always viewed that like Loader would be on board with that. So
I still think, cleansing fire is a gentle way to deal with any problem. It's a practical, thoughtful solution. Okay, we got a problem. Let's try fire.
Man,
if Liz ever decides she doesn't want to do this anymore and she starts her own YouTube channel talking about personal health, there's going to be a whole lot of videos of people having torches held up to wounds. Oh, you know what will cure this? Cleansing fire. Oh, you're having a little trouble with your regularity and using the bathroom. Have you tried cleansing fire? So I'm Dr. Harper. I'm not a doctor. Don't call me doctor. I'm just Liz. Okay, Liz. I've been having trouble. Just kind of feeling under the weather lately. Have you tried cleansing fire?
This is when Liz launches the sister site to ours called Magma Watch.
Yes. Magma piping. Alrighty. Do you want to try for one more? Because we got one more question, but it's actually kind of complicated. So
you're in charge. So
well, you're the one who'd read it, Joe.
Sure. Okay. This is from Mementh. What other shows, books, media of any kind has a story where the dragon is not beaten? There is no winner or loser per se. What do you feel about those? For me, the story might be done, things resolved, but there is no end or satisfaction, and it provokes thought and such about the story. What do you guys think? So, half of the books for Dragonlance, where there is no clear winner and everything is a political mess. Liz could probably talk about that more than I could. I think you have a more vivid memory of them than I do. But like, there's plenty of media out there where the dragon isn't just like downed or like usurped, and everything exists in a gray area.
The Empire Strikes Back. Empire Strikes Back. The victory is that they didn't all die. One of the main characters gets frozen. One of them loses their hand. There's, it is not a victory for the good guys by any stretch of the imagination. You could actually straight up, not even just the dragon isn't beaten. The dragon seems to be winning.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could say that by the end of the Empire Strikes Back, it looks like the Empire is winning. So yeah, there's quite a few in media, but that's one that comes to my mind. Liz?
At first, I was thinking about this as like literal dragons, and like, and now you've turned it on its head, just like the metaphorical dragon.
Yeah, and I think that sort of is like a really good way to approach it, right? Because metaphorical dragon, real good way to put it.
Well, the reason that I picked this was because he basically used a G.K. Chesterton quote about how fairy tales do not exist to show children that dragons, they exist to show that, St. George killing the dragon.
Mm-hmm.
The idea being, that stories are sometimes about, just giving us hope that we can win, but sometimes they're about not showing us that. Sometimes it's about, you can't win all the time. One that comes to mind again, basically along the similar lines, is the opening of Dishonored, really. You talking about Dishonored
yeah.
2, Dishonored or Dishonored 2, where sure, in the end you might get victory, but there's a big part of this where you don't. Or even to use one I was talking about earlier, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, where, Cassandra can come out of that, but even no matter what she does, she's going to end up alone. Everyone she knows and loves is going to be dead, and she's not. There are stories that are about, just accepting what you can't change, what you can't do. And so to me, that's was an interesting place to look at this from.
I think the other thing here is that you have to have stories where you lose, or you lose at least part of them, because if you just go in and you're winning, I'm going to win everything and everything's always fine and happy, like that stops having a meaning. It's the fact that you can lose, that you can fail, that really bad things can happen, that makes winning, succeeding, good things happening, that gives them their importance in a narrative. So yeah, you got to have the bad to get to the good parts.
Yeah, one of the most interesting things about Wrath of the Lich King is actually the Halls of Reflection dungeon, where you don't win, you run away, because if you don't, you die.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought that was, in a way, I always felt like that was a better ending for Wrath of the Lich King than the actual ending we got. Like if the whole thing had been, we managed to stop the Scourge for a little while, but we have to flee Arthas, and that's the end of the expansion, I thought it could have been actually pretty strong. Because, he's unstoppable. How do we beat this thing? We have no idea. So I think there is a certain amount of truth to what Liz just said.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to, I was going to say, I think that pretty much wraps us up. So at this point, I'm going to stare at Joe expectantly, like my dog always does to me when I'm forgetting to take her outside.
Well, I'll get the harness in a moment. But anyway, Blizzard Watch is made possible due to generous contributions at patreon.com/BlizzardWatch. Your continued support means this podcast signing community is able to thrive and grow. Blizzard Watch supporters enjoy exclusive benefits like early access to the podcast, better chance at having your question answered on our podcast or the queue, and an ads-free site experience.
Thanks, Joe, and thanks to both you and Liz for being here and doing this podcast with me, because if it was just me for an hour and a half, I'm pretty sure I would lose my voice. Thank you guys so much for being here and listening with us. And man, if you have a question for the show, you can send it either to podcast@blizzardwatch.com with an email, or you can go to our Discord server and go to either the Patreon Q and Podcast Questions channel or the Q and Podcast Questions channel for non-patrons. Or even if you catch me on Twitter, you can even at me, at Matthew W. Rossi. Go ahead. I don't know if I'll answer it. I don't even know if I'll see it because I'm terrible at Twitter, but it is an option I'm willing to at least explore. But thank you guys so much for being here with us. This has been the Blizzard Watch podcast, and we'll be back next week.